Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions or comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable or the Facebook event page for episode 126, Catechisms. As usual, I'm John Ruart, past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia, currently serving as junior warden. Now we'll hand it off to Robert for his introduction.
Hello, Robert Johnson from Waukegan Lodge number 78 in Waukegan, Illinois, where I'm a past master and current secretary, and some other stuff. Congrats on that junior warden, though. I don't think I remember you saying that.
Yeah, back around again. More of a seat filler while we get these junior guys groomed and ready to go.
Awesome. Congrats.
Yep. The goal is to step away as quickly as possible once they understand.
Yeah. Right. I heard that.
Yes, indeedy. Glad to hand it off. Nick, introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Nick Johnson, past master, Corinthian Lodge, number 67, and big time varmint.
Thank you, Nick. And last but not least, Jason Richards. And who do you have? And who do you have with you tonight?
Hey, Jason Richards, everybody, Senior Warden of Acacia Lodge number 16 in good old Clifton, Virginia. And since we're talking about catechisms, I figure might as well bring Mary along for the ride as well. She's very happy to be here.
Why are you petting food?
I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. You brought me the food that my food eats.
Hi, Mary. Bye, Mary.
Bye, Mary.
That's one of Jason's 400 cats.
Oh.
He's our crazy cat Mason.
He is, yeah.
Great. Moving into Masonic news this week, we have a few items, all from Chris Hodup's blog. He seems to keep punching these things out, so we're going to keep reporting on them. Most being that break.com, yes, the one and the same for all of your crazy articles, actually posted a really good article this week about 20 things you probably didn't know about Freemasonry. So have you guys read this? What do you think? I have not. So give me the lowdown. What's this all about? I hear it's well received.
Actually, oh, go ahead, Robert.
Oh, just saying, it was a really good article. And I thought it was informative. I shared it on my Grand Lodge page. Got some likes. Good times.
They didn't ban you for it?
Yeah.
Here's the first time for everything, so great.
Hey, scroll back to number 4 there, because that's the one that Jason and I were kind of looking at and had some critiques.
Number 4, modern Masonry began with a secret movement of occult rebels.
So I absolutely loved this article. It's pretty well written. But I just completely and utterly disagree with number 4 because it mentions the Rosicrucians and other secret societies, and from conversations with Tony Silvio and Andre Bellevaux and others, we've learned that Freemasonry actually predated a lot of those esoteric societies, and Freemasonry actually helped spawn some of those esoteric societies. So saying that Freemasonry in and of itself, originated with these esoteric societies is unfortunately factually inaccurate as far as we can tell.
Yeah, I would say that if anything, Masonry provided an escape or an outlet or a meeting place or a gathering place for some of those, I guess you would call them occult rebels. They didn't start anything, particularly in Masonry. I mean, I really think that Jason's on point.
Yeah, if nothing else, Freemasonry, the organization, served as kind of a springboard for these esoterically minded individuals to get together and break off and form their own groups, which is how we saw the resurgence of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and the various Rosicrucian orders. among others. There really are a number of esoterically focused orders that grew directly out of the founding members being Freemasons and wanting to go down the rabbit hole a little bit deeper than the Masonic fraternity would allow.
So I think RJ said it somewhere online, but would you recommend this as a intro article for someone who wants to know a little bit about the Masons and has nowhere to start? Is this a good idea?
Yeah, I think it's good to go. Like I said, I got a fellow craft, a friend of mine, Justin Scaife, who basically, I mean, when I threw the article up, he was the first one to hit like and read it. He thought it was a great article and informative. So,
yeah.
And I think Hodap said it too. I mean, I don't know. Break.com is kind of like Uproxx without all the goofy ads and weird stuff, but there are some goofy ads and weird stuff. But yeah, kudos to them. Good article.
Yeah, the fact of the matter was, I started to read it the other day with a healthy bit of skepticism and realized they're actually on point for about 95% of it. So it's a good introduction to the fraternity. It's one of those clickbaity titles like, you didn't know this about Freemasons? Oh, they're actually normal guys, and they do a lot of charitous giving.
Next up,
well,
20 things you didn't know about Jason's 100 cats.
Yes, and they're all lizard people.
First it was 400, now it's 100.
A lot can happen in 5 minutes.
John's an engineer. He can't count good. He only works in ones and zeros.
Ooh, yeah. Next topic. Now, RJ shared this one with me. This was actually pretty cool, that the Houston Scottish Rite building actually is installing their own holodeck.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. So, not as holodeck as you would think, Star Trek Next Gen or anything, but it's the video they share is pretty cool. It's about this really interesting digital setup. They use a ton of these really awesome HD 1080p laser projectors to project a scene 360 degrees, and it's awesome. It's pretty immersive. What I thought was really interesting was, the Scottish Rite, the Houston is obviously Southern jurisdiction, so it's AV equipment going into the Southern jurisdiction, and I think there was some initial, oh my God, SJ is going to go to videos, and that's not the case. I think what they're doing is they're using this as their backdrop instead of the. Of course, we have the beautiful painted canvases that valleys have all over the world that are priceless. But this offers something kind of cool. I mean, you can have interactive moving backgrounds. You can have stage equipment on stage, and you can actually walk a candidate around the arena and have physical objects in the middle while these backdrops are. I mean, I just was blown away. Take my money, right?
So you got a good point. I love my gadgets, but I also understand the time and place to have them, right? Technology is not the solution to everything, but if done
Blasphemy.
with the respect it deserves, yeah, this is totally 3 walls, 3 of the 4 walls are a projection that you can really immerse the candidate in the experience. I think anything you can do to increase the dramatic atmosphere, by all means, this is going to make such an impression on all the candidates if it's done with decorum.
So
next we're going to see those 4D theaters like you have at like Busch Gardens, where like they're gonna blow air like under the candidate's feet or something and
shoot a little smell action going on there.
Yes.
You don't want the smell. It's just gonna smell like chili and hot dogs. So, what was crazy, right? About I don't know, 2005, 2004. I was a frequent person at the Griffith Planetarium in Los Angeles, and they have a spectacular 360-degree laser show, in the dome, where a guide does a really cool guided tour of the stars. He's got a great voice and all this stuff. And all I can think about is if they could do that, and like part of this thing was they were in ancient Egypt, and you saw the pyramids going through the night sky and how dark it was back in ancient Egypt, or showing builders in King Solomon's temple at nighttime and looking at the alignment of the stars and all this stuff. And this was just at a planetarium. So if you could imagine putting something like that together with this kind of a system, which is now 8 years better than when I saw it, or 9 years, or whatever. I think it's really, really cool. When I posted this on our Facebook page for the Grand Lodge, also a gentleman from the Scottish Rite actually said, the Northern Jurisdiction, Valley of Chicago, actually was really thinking about doing something like this. But I think that's where I think I would draw the line is, whereas I think the Southern Jurisdiction or somebody else might use it to be a cool backdrop and then still do props and do everything inside and make it about the candidate. I worry that the Northern Jurisdiction would create, some sort of 360-degree movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, and at least for my preservationist mindset, the Valley of Winona actually, it's now the Valley of Rochester. And what they did is they actually took down all the drops that they had. I mean, these drops are from 1870, 1880. They were then donated to the city. And the city, for a while, I think 2 or 3 years, put them on display so the public could see. I mean, these drops were amazing. They were painted by, I can't remember the artist, but it was somebody who was very famous at the time. But those are now in storage. You can't see them at all. And so, and as these drops continue to be used and they continue to be worn and not being able to be the upkeep is just going to be more and more expensive as you continue to have something that's transforming from a working theatrical prop to an antique. We're going to have to start using technology in some form to protect that history, because a lot of these drops need to be preserved because they will no longer be with us.
Yeah, well said. And they are beautiful pieces of work, though. Unless it goes into, after taking upon this obligation, put on your 3D glasses now. Then, well, actually, that might be pretty cool. So,
Can you imagine? It's like you'll know when to open your eyes when you hear the chimes go like this. Those records from when you were a kid, right?
Yeah.
Whoa! It's like the worshipful master is really approaching me from the east. Oh my God!
Oh,
it's getting too close. And why does he have that dang paddle with the ball? He just keeps going like this at me.
All right, next topic. We can go down a rabbit hole there. Finally, last topic for tonight. We've talked about Masonic lodges being used as Pokestops and Poke gyms. Now, Saudi clerics have issued a fatwa against Masonic. On go.
Yes.
There's something popular. The Masons have to be behind it.
Wow.
It's so popular that they have, said that there are crosses in the game, and since it's a symbol of Christianity and Zionist theme, blah blah blah. We're behind Pokemon Go.
See, you know what the real problem is? They must not have had as many Pokestops where they were, and they're just pissed now. That's really what it is. It's just jealousy. So.
I mean, I don't even.
Well, and that one Pokestop in the Dome of the Rock is just. I mean, that gym is just difficult to take over.
Ooh. There are 3 teams. I wonder which one is which now. Talk about a rabbit hole. Well, that's the thing, is I actually had a picture of that. I think I said this last time, where there was a Pokemon sitting in just outside the DMZ in North Korea, and the first comment was, this is how World War III starts. Yeah. I'm sitting there going, see, that's what they're just doing it for our help. They're just saying, you know what, stop, just stop.
Yeah, imagine if this had been back 20, 30 years ago, Pokemon Gym right at the Berlin Wall. I mean,
Gorbachev.
We need an entire website dedicated to inappropriately placed Pokemon gyms.
Well, that's the thing is like I don't understand the Masonic connection either because I may or may not have been playing this game obsessively, but if I was, there aren't that many Masonic lodges. I mean, there's even on Reddit there was a Masonic Pokestop. We had to put it up there
Mega
just because
yeah,
because we needed a mega thread because starting to clutter up the actual sub, and I mean there's only 32 comments on it, so I don't know if there's that many to begin with. So
all right, let's get into our favorite Masonic trivia question. Nick,
I have a question.
you have a question? Do you have a question?
I actually
Yes,
do.
We have several.
Would you like me to tell you my question? That's my question.
We failed miserably, so enlighten us, Nick.
Wait,
All right.
what segment is this?
Jason, you tell me.
It's a Masonic Monday question on Tuesday.
Yay.
Yeah.
On Tuesday?
On Tuesday.
That was about as good as
Yeah. I'm not giving you the pleasure, Jason.
All right, so we had some correct responses. Now I haven't been updating it as much just because it's summer, so I'm sure the Grand Lodge Education Officer is probably going, why isn't he sending out these questions on Mondays? Doesn't he even know what Monday looks like?
You're fired.
So, I know, you're fired. But anyway, so I'd like to congratulate Seth Lewis, Matthew Apple, Joey Boyer, and Christopher Croto for answering the last question that I did, which was concerning the Scottish Rite and how many inspectors general were needed to form a Grand Council. That would be 9, and that was in both Constitution translations, both the Latin and the French. And then, at least in the Latin, it required 5 to be of the country of origin's dominant religion. And in the French translation, it was 5 that had to be Christian. So, both answers are correct, and I accepted credit for both. So congratulations, guys. All right, now for your question. As you know, since we were discussing the political conventions at this time, that there is actually an anti-Masonic party that was formed after the William Morgan affair occurred. This occurred in 1826 in the burned-over district of New York. It ultimately led to what was called the Anti-Masonic Party, which held the first political convention in the United States. But it was not Morgan's expose that was the main thrust for the anti-Masonic movement. Instead, it was this expose written by a New York clergyman who also happened to be a former Mason. That work was the source of most of the anti-Masonic furor that swept the country. It was written in 1829. Your question: what was the title of this expose, and what was the name of the New York clergyman? When you have an answer, send it to masonicmonday@gmail.com. Don't forget to include your lodge name, your lodge number, and the hashtag. Is there any comic book movies coming out? Oh,
Dr. Strange.
Comic-Con. There we go. Comic-Con was amazing.
Suicide Squad?
Suicide Squad. Oh, there we go. Hashtag Suicide Squad.
Hot Topic Squad.
Hot Topic Squad. Oh my God, so true. Back to you, John.
We'll save Doctor Strange for next week.
Dude, I can't wait.
Good
Like,
trailer, by the way.
It's going to be amazing.
Dude.
See, you're converting me. I don't know if this is acceptable. Let's go into this week's topic, finally, 25 minutes in. It's a good discussion, though. I love it. Catechisms. This week we're going to talk about catechisms. What are they? Where they came from? And actually, the best part of this show is the cross-jurisdictional differences that we have. So I'll kind of kick things off with a quick overview. For those who are familiar with the Catholic faith, there is such a thing as a catechism, which is a profession of faith that has a memorization element added to that, in which the person learning the catechism has to remember in order and memorization of a specific wording or phrasing, the statement of beliefs and ideals. The fraternity has adopted a similar, but not exact, type of question and answer format. So for those who are not Masons yet or just about to be, that one thing I learned that I did not know before joining the Masons is that there's a lot of homework involved to move on to the next level. And here in Virginia, after you get your first initiation, your entered apprentice degree, you've got a lot of work to do. And in fact, you have a lot of memorization to do in the form of a question and answer session where you only have to memorize the answers, but they have to be pretty close to word perfect. You work with a mentor, and they will ask you specific questions in specific orders of what you learn, and then you have to answer them. What's amazing about Freemasonry is that these have been around since the early, early days. In fact, that's actually where we can trace some of our Masonic history to, in the fact that there were exposés. You talked about a few exposés in your MMQ OT. And these catechisms, as question and answers of what a Mason was supposed to learn as part of his instruction, as part of the degree system, they've been around since the early, early days, even around the formation of the Grand Lodge. So they have certainly helped at least the Masonic scholars in identifying what things have carried forward since the earliest days of Masonry. But I'm going to ask you guys now.
So, John, before you ask that, sorry, they actually go back quite a bit further than the formation of the Grand Lodge, because you take a look at the old charges of Masonry,
Sure.
and the majority of those old charges are actually in catechism format. So if you're looking at the Noahide foundations to the Masonic third degree, you look at the Graham manuscript, that is actually almost entirely in a question and answer catechism format. Now you can ask your silly question.
My silly question is, what purpose do they serve? Right? Why do we still have this archaic element compared to what we would normally do today with any other group? Why do you think? What purpose does it serve as far as learning about Masonry? Nick, what do you think?
Well, it's really interesting. On the sub, we were chatting, and I'll do a shout out to Jason Mitchell, who's a friend of the show. We were discussing what is the purpose of memorization and proficiencies and other things like that. And for him, he explained it in a way that it's a way to connect you to the work in a way that you can't do anywhere else. Memorization is just something we don't do anymore. And, Leo Laporte uses the term GAM, or Google Assisted Memory, to describe it, because that's the thing. It's like, if you or I or anybody is trying to remember a fact, why would I actually memorize these pieces of information when I don't have to? I mean, I can just pull out this thing and just say, hey, what's the answer to this or that? And so it makes it so that you're just not really connected to the information. You're surrounded by information, you're bombarded by information, but you're not really gaining any kind of context to the information, because you're not having to write into your own mind what that content means in the context of what you've experienced. And so I think that's kind of, I'm kind of springboarding off of his comments, because his were much more eloquent than mine. But, essentially it's, how do you develop the mind in such a way to be porous enough to accept the things in which we as Masons are being taught through the 3 degrees in an effective way? And I think memorization is by far the best way to do it.
Well, it really becomes muscle memory at that point. And I've found, at least, that once you get to the point where catechism recitation becomes second nature, and you're not thinking about worrying which order the words come in, that's when you really have enough brain power left to really dissect the meanings of the words, and it's almost you break that wall where you're just trying to learn it, and then all of a sudden it really becomes part of you, and that's when you can really start to inculcate those teachings and those exhortations.
Actually, I'm going to build on that. After listening to a couple episodes of Ex Oriente and having Eric Diamond on the show, he's really hit hard on the Pardes school of teaching and instruction, specifically in the Jewish culture, but you can apply that to not only your understanding of your Holy Scripture, but possibly even Masonic ritual as well. I've said before that there's definitely deliberate hidden things, and that's why it's called allegories, in our Masonic ritual. And so if you look at the 4 steps of the Pardes system, which stands for different PRDS, it's different Jewish terms for how to read not the Quran, the Talmud, that there is the P, the Peshat. I'm going to screw up the pronunciation, so bear with me. There's the surface, straight, or literal direct meaning, right? So this is exactly the words on the page. They have a specific meaning. And to me, that is the ritual of the Catechism, that you learn literally the word by word. And to your point, Jason, once that becomes ingrained, once it becomes second nature, then you don't have to stress about the word and the phrasing. You can now go to the next level, which is the remez, the hints, or the deep allegoric meaning behind the literal words. And then it goes on, where you go 2 layers deeper, where you have an inquire level to look comparatively through similar occurrences, and then all the way down to the 4th level, which is the secret, mystery, or esoteric meanings as given through inspiration or revelation. I think the same could be done, but you got to start with the literal. You can't jump down to the esoteric until you really understand what the words say, so then you can go into what the words mean.
I don't think catechisms are necessary.
You got to be. There's always one.
No, I mean, so I went through and I did my catechisms. I did long form catechisms, all 3 degrees. I have my proficiency certificates and all this goofy stuff. But Illinois also offers something called a short form catechism, which is very abbreviated, like very abbreviated. And I understand why they did it. I didn't quite like it at all. I said, that's ridiculous that you're just going to get to do everything that I did and didn't have to memorize anything. Or in other instances, going through when there's like a Grand Master's Festival and you get all the degrees and there's no catechism in between any of them.
One day conferral.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
So
Excuse me.
Conferral, there's no catechism in between. And again, I was of the mindset, I studied my butt off, and you're just going to get this?
Mm-hmm.
What is the issue there, right? And I don't want to go into Blue Lightnings or one-day conferrals, but back to the idea of the catechism, I think my view on the whole catechism really changed about 2 years ago when I really started mentoring Masons as they came in. After the degree, of course, I said, look, in order to progress, you need to return either the catechism, long or short form. Start with the long. If you can't do it, go to the short. And I tell them, listen, the reason you need to do this is not only, A, it shows us that you're dedicated in order to go to the next degree, but there's a lot of old guys in here who are literally not going to give you, even though they won't admit it, there's a prejudice. There's definitely a prejudice with anybody who doesn't return long form. I mean, there's a mindset there. I think you're not going to get the same amount of respect if you went short form.
Good thing we're all on the level. Hey, so while we're here, Robert, why don't you tell us what are the requirements to memorize catechism in your state?
So you get an intender book. The intender book has We'll review certain sections of the administrative parts and the catechism, a long form, a short form, and there are 10 questions in the back of the book. The requirements in order to go to the next degree literally are: the intender is the teacher, the intendee the student. The intender just goes to the master and says he's ready to go. Now, that's it. Now, the actual student has the choice of returning long form in front of the lodge, long form in front of his intender, like in a private room, short form in front of the lodge or in a private room, or if he can't do any of those things, he can just tell me in his own words what happened. Do you understand this? Do you understand that? Show me do guards and signs, words, passwords, whatever the case may be. And if the intender thinks he's ready to go, it's good. And my reason for, I wanted to make that point that catechisms to me, like I said, I don't find them completely necessary, because to me that's rote memorization versus real life experience and understanding. So it can go both ways for me, but I understand. I treat the catechisms as a gatekeeper.
Interesting. Nick, what is the requirement in Minnesota?
It depends. The classic law school answer. It depends on. We just passed, I believe, a new resolution that's now in the Constitution and General Regs, one of the two, that says that you can either do what I took, the proficiency exam, which I guess is short form for everybody. We all did short form here. There is no. But now, if you want to, you can return the full lecture back as a substitute, if you would like. So you have one or two options, I believe. And going back to the one-day classes, we actually had to modify the code, because the code essentially said you have to return these. Well, obviously you can't do that if you have these guys there. So we actually had to modify the code to rubber stamp them through, and then it puts the onus on the lodge to have them come back at some time and educate them, I guess is how they put it, which I assume means memorizing, but who knows.
I mean, it could just be mentorship. I mean, walking them through the degrees.
Yeah,
But that's what Illinois. I think what you said about that, getting rid of that clause or whatever, for returning. I think that's the reason why Illinois has it that way, is because we do these classes and they can't be against themselves.
Mm-hmm. All right, Jason, why don't you tell us, since you're about to be worshipful master next 6 months?
Pending the will and pleasure of the brethren. By the way, the date is December 3rd, Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Pending the will and pleasure of the brethren of Acacia Lodge, of course. So in Virginia, the length of the catechism also depends. We do have one standard catechism length, but there are other methods of education that candidates can elect to go through in order to show themselves to be proficient to the degrees. So you have the one-day conferrals, which have mentorship requirements in the state, and then we also have an alternate method of instruction where the candidates attend a class, and then they actually show themselves to have learned a truncated portion of the catechism. Really the first 6 or 7 questions. But as far as the catechism is concerned, it's a good 10 to 13 minutes depending on the degree. So in Virginia, if you do the catechism route, the catechism between the entered apprentice degree and fellowcraft degree, and between the fellowcraft and master mason degrees are mandatory. However, there is a catechism for the master mason degree, which is optional. So if you stand proficiency in all 3 catechisms, John, you need to do your Master Mason.
I do.
You get a really cool certificate from the Grand Lodge.
John, you haven't returned your Master Mason catechism?
All right, so this is going to segue into our last comment that I had for our agenda tonight, which is, how long did yours take? How long did it take you, and what form did you take? And here I go. I'm going to drop a bomb. I did the short form, and I was lazy, and I didn't have an excuse, but it took me 2 months between my EA and Fellowcraft, and then another 5 months between Fellowcraft and Master Mason, which is supposed to be easier because you already are familiar with the language. Yeah, I was a slacker. So, if you're listening, and if you're a new Mason, please, for me, do it the long form. You'll be so much better off. And see, the thing is, I had to learn a lot of that anyway for our warden certificate, which is our proficiency in order to sit in the Oriental chair in the East. So if I had learned that, if I'd done it right the first time, I wouldn't have had to learn it the second time. So shame on me for being a slacker. I did the about 6 or 7 questions, the short form, and then was able to answer anything else, literally anything else in my own words, because I soaked up the symbolism and the meaning. So for that, it did pay off because I understood the meaning of Masonry at that point, rather than rote memorization, to your point, RJ. But yeah, 2 months between first and second, and then another 5 months between second and third. So shame on me. Robert, how about you? How long did it take you to do your catechism?
It took me 1 month to return long form the first degree, and that's the same with Jason. It's like 10 to 13 minutes long to do it. Then the second degree, I returned a month after you go in. I got my EA degree, then they handed me the book, and a month later, literally to the day, I returned it, and then right after I got my second degree, and then a month later from that date, I returned the second degree and got my third degree, and then I was a little bit lazy, and I waited 2 months to return the Master Mason.
So you bring up a good point. You have a book. You have a literal book. Virginia is still one of the last mouth-to-ear states.
Yeah,
so I had to schedule time with my retired mentor, which was great. I had enjoyed the experience, but it was a pain in the butt to work.
This is that's a huge thing we definitely should have mentioned before, is that like me, I had this little 4x4-inch book that fit in my back pocket. And at the time I was working at the airport, so I would have this thing sitting in the back of my pocket and be sitting in an aircraft tug, and I would be waiting to cross a runway for like 20, 30 minutes sometimes, and I would just have the book out, and I'd be studying it. And then he's like, tug 5, cross the runway. Okay, book goes back away, and I carry on with my day. So it was always in the back, right? I didn't have a mentor mouth to ear on my cell phone, right? So that would be huge.
Technically not allowed to do it by cell phone in Virginia.
Yeah. So there you go. But it's got to be mouth to ear, so that's got to be way harder. And so, to your point, John, I almost say you get a total pass. In addition to that, look how active you are. The catechism is not a means by judging somebody or determining how active they're going to be.
That's a great point.
Well, and that's the same thing with one-day conferrals, right? Yeah, one-day conferral is not a precursor to what kind of Mason the man is going to be. Same with the catechism.
One-day classes.
Now, that said, I do have to agree with John, though, because if you are interested in getting more involved in the degrees and taking more parts in ritual, or sitting in the chairs and going through the line, having that catechism foundation is going to be 90% of what you have to know for the degrees.
Yep.
And I directly attribute my having learned all 3 catechisms to my being able to get my warden certificate my junior warden year.
Nick, how long did it take you to get yours done?
Well, first I have to ask a question. So with this mouth to ear, I haven't figured it out how literal it is, but so when you have like one of our senior brothers and their hearing aid is turned down so they're not exactly sure how loud their voice is, when they're whispering this stuff to you, are they actually yelling in your ear? Is that kidding. I love those guys. All right, so with me,
it's not tongue to ear.
Well, I don't know how you boys do it out there, so just curious. But so in Minnesota, let's see, at my lodge, I had a mentor who was helping me, but I also had, other help, I guess is how you'd explain it. But So I returned it 2 weeks after I got the first degree, and then after I got the fellowcraft degree, I returned that one 2 weeks later. Then I was ready to go, and then I think a month later I did the Master Mason one. So
Wow, I'm jealous.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty fast.
well, all of a sudden they said this is the degree schedule. It's like, oh, okay.
How boxing works. Jason, how about you smarty pants?
um, it took me 3 weeks to learn my EA Catechism, and then I had to sit on my butt for another 3 months while they got through the other the guys in the hopper for degrees, who went the alternate method, by the way. I learned the Fellowcraft Catechism in 2 half-hour sessions, and I had to, again, wait for another 2 to 4 months for my Master Mason degree, because, again, other guys were in the hopper who went through the alternate method.
You did the long form on all
I did the long form on all of them, and then after my Master Mason degree, I stood proficiency the very next meeting, which was about 3 weeks after my degree. Oh, and this is also not approved in Virginia, but I shocked everybody when I asked myself the questions and answered them.
So you actually
all
learned
3.
twice as much as you needed to.
I learned the questions and the answers.
You mentioned like how long did it take? I'm not thinking about like when I actually learned it. I don't know how long it took me to learn it. I just remember when I returned them.
So according to my Google assisted memory over here, the word I'm looking for is savant. Jason Richards is the rightful savant.
And we're not allowed. We're not allowed to do what you did. Did you have like a prompter in front of your lodge to do that, or you just chose to do it that way?
I chose to do it that way, and learned after my Master Mason proficiency that that was not to be done. When you stand proficiency, you have your mentor there with you who is supposed to ask you the questions.
Yeah.
What happened was literally my mentor, David Hill, who did our Australian Masonry episode, he just sat there stone-faced and said nothing the entire time, and I just like talked at the worshipful master for like 12 minutes straight.
So today I learned Jason Richards was made an irregular Mason.
No. I stood proficiency in an irregular manner.
There you go.
Don't stand
But the lodge voted me in.
Now that's an interesting question. So in Minnesota, it is up to the master to declare proficiency.
Yep. Same here.
And so
Voice vote of the lodge.
That is really fascinating to me.
So in Virginia, the master has the ultimate authority, right? But he has to call a voice vote. So it could be like everybody screaming nay, and he could be like, the lodge is satisfied with proficiency. Good job.
Yeah, just like John Boehner during the Republican National Convention.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of interesting is one person brought up that by having a vote for proficiency, you're essentially petitioning on the same candidate 4 times. And so, if a guy tried to blackball, and if your state allows for one blackball to not kill a petition, you could continue to impede someone's progress based on its proficiency.
Well, and also, the chances of it occurring is very slim because the mentor is going to be there and he's not going to waste his time and the candidate's time to go through that. So,
yeah,
interesting. All right, well, I have one question for you, Nick. Can you have multiple candidates returning their catechism at once?
All the time.
And then the master can just declare them all proficient?
Yep. Per his will and pleasure.
So I've seen that done in other jurisdictions, and it really screws me up because, like, I'm used to following a set order, and in Virginia, you can have more than one candidate return their catechism in the same night, but you don't necessarily alternate. You usually just do it one and then the other, but I've seen jurisdictions where it's like, okay, every 4th question is you, and that would just wreak havoc on my memory.
So we can do that here in Illinois. We can go back and forth. One thing was interesting I was going to mention is that when the master declares proficient or not proficient, so after the catechism is done, they leave, and then the master's supposed to declare, and the guy's not supposed to really find out until he's told, like, someday after the meeting. But that, like, never happens. They're always just like, proficient. I declare that proficient. And then everybody's like, woo, golf clap.
So I don't know if it's...
He only got one word right, folks.
Yeah, isn't that the best? Like, yeah, you missed 2-3 words, but you got most of it.
Well, and can you guys return proficiency on the same night that you're doing the degree?
Yeah, we do it all the
Yes,
time.
and we often do.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a risk involved, right? Wait until the last minute, but time boxes are great.
Hey, man,
Exactly.
if the mentor thinks you're ready and he tells the master he's ready to go, the mentor's not going to bring you in front of the lodge to return and get everybody there for the next degree if he doesn't think you're going to nail it.
And are you guys required to have proficiencies in open lodge?
So not for short form. I was one of those lazy guys that was like what RJ said.
Sure.
He's good enough. He's good to go. Just go ahead and schedule his fellow craft date.
Gotcha.
All right.
So
Jason,
now for long form, real quick, John. Sorry. For long form, we typically do them actually not only in open lodge, but on the degree level of the catechism. So
that's a pain.
that's a pain. So there will be a lot of times where it's like you're conferring a Master Mason degree, but the fellowcraft has a stamp proficiency for his catechism. So you actually have to call down to the fellowcraft degree, do the catechism, okay, vote on him, kick him out, call back on to Master Mason. It just makes for a long night for everybody.
Yeah, same thing in Illinois.
All right. Rock on. Okay, now we can do social media. Jason, take it away.
Okay. So, first and foremost, from Brother Joseph Jackson, he's exhorting us to remember that all catechisms matter. We appreciate that that reminder. Oh man, we have so many great comments tonight. So I encourage anybody who's listening, please check out the Facebook page because there's a lot of great conversations going on. Brother Angelo Mino says, I strongly believe that proficiency work is a tool to build better Masonic intercourse between all brothers. Your mentor became your Masonic father. The brotherly love and friendship will shine between all members of the lodge. And you really don't do catechism just to memorize the Q&A. Your mentor is really supposed to be there to help you with the deeper understanding of the meanings behind the words.
Supposed to. So that is a
supposed
good
to, yes.
That I've taken on Brother Al Leathers as my mentee, my first ever mentee for long form. So it was a challenge to myself and to him, and I would stop at certain phrases and say, here's my interpretation of what that actually means, right? And go into a little more detail. So he understood the meaning rather than rote memorization.
And I would yell at you both when you messed up.
Yes, you would.
When I was there. So Brother Alex Powers says that he feels catechisms are very important, and actually he thinks the requirements need to increase. He's frustrated with one-day classes, and has even known that some of his brethren allow people to read from a cipher instead of returning from memory. He says some things need to be earned and not given.
So let me ask you this: in the one state that has the most Masons anywhere in the United States doesn't require any catechism. You just wait a month.
Well, also that state has kind of an awkward degree system anyway. We are talking about Pennsylvania, right?
Pennsylvania, most Masons ever, right? Richest Grand Lodge, most Masons, they're successful, they're doing well. No catechisms.
Crazy.
But if you want to sit in a chair, then you have to show the Grand Lodge that you know your stuff.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well,
it's kind of interesting. It's like, as I've described Minnesota, it's kind of a pioneer Grand Lodge system. It's one of those that the lodges have far too much power sometimes, but at the same time, it's kind of nice because, well, you can kind of do your own thing. And it's kind of interesting is that the Catechism, it's important, but I've seen it done in many different ways, in many different lodges. Where it's like some are an open lodge, some are kind of open, some are off somewhere else in a closet somewhere working on it. And it's one of those that they're just kind of working to get these guys to grow. The Catechism is viewed here as much as a way to move people up as much as it is to grow them. I mean, that's pretty much how it was described to me by a couple of guys, was that this is a learning tool. It's something to get you ready for the next degree, but it's more so that you can learn. It's not like, here's a test, prove how smart you are. Are you smarter than a third degreeer? It's like, no, you're good to go. You're good. And that's the thing. It's like I kind of agree with Robert. It shouldn't be some kind of impediment to growth just because one guy is an idiot savant that can grab all kinds of information but doesn't know anything. Because I can describe myself as that. I was able to memorize all this stuff. It took me 3 years later to finally figure out what the hell I was saying.
yeah. So actually, because I live close to Jason, I actually have a picture of him working with his catechism mentor, and it's the savant of Hoffman as Rain Man, working on word for word.
That's really offensive.
Hey,
I love you and your big head, Jason.
Waterburn.
So we're going to go to Brother Donnie Dillon, who wins the internet today, who has the angel expelling Adam and Eve. The angel says, I don't care if it was a Pokestop.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and actually, I do actually have a picture of me returning my catechism, and I might dig that up at some point if we have enough time. So we'll see. But we have a lot of other people who are saying awesome stuff on the Facebook page. So actually, this is something interesting. Brother Alex Powers, who is one of our good friends and brothers, listens to the show every week. He shared with us the Kansas Mason magazine. Has an article about millennials in Masonry, and if you look at the little cutout,
Nice. We got a shout out.
Masonic Roundtable got a shout out in the Grand Lodge of Kansas publication. So,
well, that's nice.
That is kind of awesome. So thank you so much, Alex, for sharing. That's awesome. So Brother Chris Treeper says he had the privilege to observe an EA return his proficiency in a California lodge. And when the worshipful master called for the proficiency vote, he had a somewhat puzzled look on his face and evidently made an audible, The brother I was sitting next to asked me if something was wrong. I told him in Texas it was only the first section. The first time he learned that different jurisdictions have different ways of doing things.
Wow.
So, and it brings up an interesting comment that Brother Ken Lotman made earlier tonight, who said, well, Texas is a mouth-to-ear state, so we don't have catechisms. I was just kind of like, Because the catechisms don't equal ciphers. Go ahead, Robert.
I'm just thinking, it's like, well, just because it's not printed doesn't necessarily mean it's not a catechism. I mean, it is. It's just not printed.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, Ken,
how do you guys handle guys from different countries that have to, that English is not their first language, and they're having to go through these,
Short form, buddy.
Yeah.
Alternate method.
Okay, because I mean, I see it again as this impediment. I mean, it no longer becomes a tool for instruction; it becomes almost a tool of, I don't know, impediment. It becomes an impediment, and I just it concerns me sometimes when somebody who might not particularly like somebody who doesn't speak English as a first language and uses it again as less of a tool and more of a blunt object, to prevent advancement. So, again, I'm of two minds. I really find it to be a useful exercise for myself, but I don't know. I fear when it gets used dangerously.
Hey, I found my picture of me returning my catechism.
Is that a picture of you in open lodge? Is that even OMG?
Oh.
So I cropped that picture a great deal, but yeah, we're not going to talk about that. Picture was taken a long time ago, and I'm going to stop screen sharing now. Okay, yeah, it never happened.
Before any IT policy.
Are you more concerned about the vacant stare you had?
No, I'm actually looking at the guy being like, holy cow, like, he was so thin. This is back before I got the true wages of a master mason, which are the spaghetti dinner.
I thought the true wages were lapel pins and extra pounds.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give back about 100 pieces of wages that have earned.
Oh my god.
Cool.
Yes.
Wow. There's a ton more on there, isn't there, Jason? So.
Oh yeah, and brother, I have to give a shout out to Brother Angelo because he says, ask me. English is my fourth language. So that is just absolutely crazy.
So I think that's one thing I'll chime in on. I do feel bad, but Northern Virginia is a mixing bowl of a lot of cultures, and we have just in my mother lodge, we have a lot of people from different originating countries with English as they're definitely their second or third language. So that's going to make it even doubly hard when it's hard enough for us to learn the Old English style that we teach in Virginia, but then for a non-English speaker to learn Old English, that's just got to screw with your head. So I give those brothers extra kudos for taking the time and effort to progress in that fashion. On that note, let's start taking it home, and we'll start with Robert Johnson.
Well, I learned some intricate details just from hearing you guys kind of talk about your jurisdictions, and I've got a million more questions that we just can't ask on air. So really cool stuff. Learned a lot, as always. Great comments too on the social media. Even though I kind of disagree with catechisms and the strict observance of them, I see their necessity, and I know that they play a great deal of importance to a lot of you, and they do for me also. I mean, I see them more as a way to prove yourself as going into administrative roles within a lodge. But anyway, if you enjoy Masonic podcasts, please check out WCY Podcast. Whence Came You? It goes live 9:30 p.m. on Sunday nights. And the last episode we just had was Adam Thayer, who did a great guest episode, so check it out. I got a lot of complaints about the first time he did an episode because the audio was pretty bad, but we splurged a little bit. We got him a good mic and everything, and so this last episode, if you weren't listening because you thought it was going to be not easy to hear, rest assured it's 320 kilobyte dual channel stereo. So eat your heart out and enjoy.
He reads my words well, I gotta say.
Yeah, he did. He covered a great piece by Nick from the Millennial Freemason, and looking forward to continued pieces like that, Nick.
Yes. So not only did he speak well, he also had great content. Like Johnson. Nick, final thoughts?
Oh, well, first, I guess I should be. I'm finishing up my final paper on that series. I'm going outside of this to say yes. So expect a Ecclesiastes examination of the combination of the plumb and level. And now you're all salivating, so I guess I better start writing that stupid paper now. I like catechisms. I like mind games, or not mind games, but mind challenges and things like that. there's research out there that seems to show that one way to prevent Alzheimer's and dementia is the consistent use of memorization of facts and the ability to then present them after you've learned them is a way to prevent dementia and Alzheimer's to set in the brain.
Great.
And it's essentially it's under the idea, I guess is how they describe it, as the use it or lose it principle. And so it really does focus the mind. I just fear that sometimes some of our brothers, I don't necessarily believe that it's like a nefarious purpose by which you see these guys kind of hem and haw over the proficiency and how important it is. I think there's a certain culture within Masonry that likes tests and moving up and rank and things like that, and this is just one of those things for them. And I get that. That's fine. That's their bag. It's not mine. I view it as a tool, and that's what a proficiency, at least that's what we call it, a proficiency should do. It's a tool to guide your mind from seeing what you have seen and then being able to take that knowledge into the next degree and figure it out. So yeah, as long as it's not being used as some kind of blunt object to prevent advancement of gentlemen who are otherwise qualified, I definitely think proficiencies are a good tool. So that's about it. And yes, I am going to write that blog post. It's sitting in the hopper. I actually opened it up, and now I'm crying because it looks like I have some work to do.
I believe it when I see it. Thank you, Nick. Jason Richards.
All right, thanks everybody for watching this tonight and listening to us drone on about mouth-to-ear catechisms and all that good stuff while skirting around the stuff that we can't talk about. So if you're not a Mason, the only way to get to hear more is to experience it yourself. So put in a petition. So really, catechisms, learning the catechism and then reciting the catechism has been one of the more rewarding things I've done in Masonry. If nothing else, then it gave me ready access to someone who was an absolutely wonderful mentor. And it really cemented that bond of brotherhood with me very early on in my experience, and I think that's really colored my entire worldview of the fraternity from the start. So catechism is just as much about the mentorship as it is the memorization. So I would encourage you, if you are going through the degrees, or even if you've already gone through the degrees and you haven't learned the catechism, seek out a mentor and go ahead and learn it. Stand proficiency anyway. It's a great exercise for your mind. I guarantee you'll get to know, you'll get to figure out a lot more of the deeper meanings behind Masonry by having the catechism up here, and you may enjoy a close bond of a mentoring relationship because of it. So there's really no downside to taking it upon yourself to learn a catechism. So I highly recommend it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll give it back to you, John.
Thank you, Jason. I'll just add that don't just learn any catechism, do the long form. Don't be like me. Don't be like Johnny. Take the time, dedicate your time, set it aside to work on the long form if possible. You'll get so much more out of it. I think RJ brings up some good points about their validity and more especially is it really an anachronism for this age that we're in. However, if they are there, then they're there, and we really can't change that at this point. So embrace it and take it as an effort to get the hard stuff out of the way, learning the literal words, the rote memorization, so that once you stand proficiency, then it'll be even easier to get into the philosophic and esoteric aspects of the craft. With that, thank you very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.